In this podcast episode, former GB News presenter Dan Wootton opens up about his experience of being canceled by the network. He shares details about the allegations made against him by Byline Times, a blog that he claims acted out of malice to destroy his reputation. Wootton explains that the allegations were proven to be false, and he criticizes the lack of accountability in the media industry, particularly towards organizations like Byline Times that are not regulated. Wootton reflects on his time at GB News, where he was a top-rated host and believed in the channel's mission. However, he faced intense pressure and scrutiny after allegations were made against him. He describes a chaotic start at GB News, where technical difficulties plagued the early days of the channel. Despite overcoming these challenges and becoming successful, Wootton found himself targeted by the left-wing media, leading to his suspension from the network. The turning point for Wootton's cancellation came during an interview with actor Lawrence Fox, where controversial comments were made about a journalist. Wootton explains that he was suspended for not showing enough shock or outrage at Fox's remarks, which led to his departure from GB News. He expresses frustration at being held to a different standard than other presenters and believes that his suspension was a result of pressure from external forces. Wootton addresses the allegations made against him by Byline Times, emphasizing that they were false and driven by malicious intent. He details the backgrounds of the individuals behind the allegations, including convicted criminals and his abusive ex-partner. Despite proving his innocence and receiving apologies and damages from mainstream media outlets, Wootton criticizes the lack of accountability in the press and the unchecked power of organizations like Byline Times. Wootton expresses feeling let down by GB News for giving in to the pressure and ultimately parting ways with him. He believes that his suspension was unjust and that he was not given a fair chance to defend himself. Wootton also reflects on the challenges of live television and the expectations placed on presenters to conform to certain narratives. He regrets apologizing for a mistake on air and acknowledges the importance of standing by one's beliefs, even in the face of criticism. Wootton reveals that his time at GB News came to an end when he was asked to stop attacking the mainstream media on air. This directive clashed with his personal beliefs and motivations for joining the channel, as he had been disillusioned with the mainstream media and sought to offer a different perspective. This shift in direction signaled to Wootton that the channel was moving towards aligning with the establishment rather than challenging it. Wootton also highlights the pressure presenters face at GB News to conform to producer instructions and avoid controversy. He mentions instances where presenters were reprimanded for minor issues, leading to a culture of fear and self-censorship among the team. This environment, he argues, stifles authenticity and undermines the channel's mission of providing a platform for diverse viewpoints. The conversation delves into the ethics of releasing private messages, with Wootton expressing his disapproval of his private messages being made public. He emphasizes the importance of maintaining boundaries between the public and private spheres, citing the need for trust and confidentiality in communication. Wootton criticizes the decision to release his messages, questioning the implications for future interactions and the erosion of privacy in public life. Wootton also addresses the issue of false allegations and media campaigns targeting high-profile individuals. He calls for a more stringent approach to reporting on allegations, advocating for a wait-and-see approach until charges are filed. He points out the damaging effects of media pressure on legal proceedings and the lack of due process in handling sensitive accusations. The conversation shifts to the advertising ban faced by GB News, orchestrated by organizations like Hope Not Hate. Wootton condemns the attempt to stifle free speech through advertising boycotts, labeling it as anti-democratic and restrictive. He highlights the disparity between American and British attitudes towards controversial content, noting the more liberal approach in the US compared to the UK. Wootton challenges the characterization of GB News as a far-right or fascist organization, arguing that the channel's discussions are within the realm of reasonable discourse. He points out the disconnect between media portrayals and public sentiment, citing overwhelming support from viewers in response to controversial incidents involving presenters like Lawrence Fox. Wootton expresses his belief that the mainstream media is dying and that independent media is the future. He talks about his transition from mainstream media to independent media, where he feels liberated and able to reach a larger audience. He emphasizes the importance of authenticity and trust in independent media, as opposed to the mainstream media, which he sees as biased and unreliable. He mentions the impact of independent media in challenging mainstream narratives and providing a platform for diverse voices. Wootton questions the decision of GB News to hire politicians like Jacob Rees-Mogg and Nigel Farage as presenters, arguing that it compromises the channel's independence and credibility. He expresses doubts about GB News' future, especially with the strict regulations imposed by Ofcom and the changing political landscape with a Labour administration coming into power. He suggests that GB News should consider becoming an independent media outlet to thrive in the evolving media landscape. The conversation shifts to the issue of bias in media, with Wootton acknowledging that everyone has biases. He criticizes the BBC for its perceived bias and misinformation, particularly on topics like climate change and transgender issues. He argues that the mainstream media often presents a one-sided view of complex issues, labeling dissenting voices as conspiracy theorists or misinformation spreaders. He advocates for a more honest and transparent approach to journalism, where journalists can express their opinions without fear of censorship or backlash. Towards the end of the podcast, Wootton raises the issue of postal voting and its impact on democracy. He suggests that certain sectors of society may be using postal voting to manipulate election results, citing examples from the UK and the US. He calls for a national conversation on the integrity of the voting process and the need to investigate potential abuses of postal voting. He challenges the mainstream media to address this issue and provide more in-depth coverage on the topic to ensure fair and transparent elections.